Hello, welcome to another episode of the Benchwarmers. I'm Matt, here with my co-host Ryan.
Hey everybody, welcome to the 29th episode. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Benchwarmer06. Subscribe to our podcast on Google Play Music, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and YouTube.
On today's episode, we're going to discuss big games of the NBA schedule and some newsworthy topics in the college world.
The Benchwarmers. So let's get into the NBA schedule. Let's talk about the big topic is the first week of the NBA season, which is starting on Tuesday, October 16th. You know, they started the season early and earlier to try and minimize back-to-back games. So I really like the fact that it's starting earlier than around Halloween. Makes it more exciting. And the first game, one of the first two games, is the Sixers versus the Boston Celtics, which I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see our Sixers get back in there and, you know, how to play some basketball. And I've been reading that, you know, the Sixers supposedly have one of the easiest first 20 games of the season, but this first one definitely isn't an easy one. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and this is a good test, I feel like, for both teams. Sixers, obviously the younger team, but, you know, you have Kyrie and Hayward coming back, so we got to see how they work as a team, because we know how well they did last year at the end of the season with the young guys, Tatum, Rozier, and all of them leading the team. So I want to see how the team gels with the two veterans coming back after injury. And of course, you know, as a Sixers fan, both Ryan and I, we want to see how much progress the Sixers have improved. Let's see how Simmons and Embiid come about. Let's see if Simmons has a jump shot. Let's see if Embiid could dominate the post even more than he did last year. I mean, these are things that are definitely, we could tell from the get-go. I'm hoping that's, you know, it's a good game. I'm not saying that the Sixers need to win to show us that they improved. I just want to play them tough, and, you know, let's just see that, you know, we have a good season to look forward to.
Well, I will pull this stat out since you did bring up win or lose here. I hope the Sixers can pull out a win, but, you know, it's definitely a tougher to start off with. But, you know, like you said, with the guys coming back, it may throw it off. But I will say that the first 20 games are in the last 15 full NBA seasons, so 82 games talking about here. You know, in the first 20 games, the more wins you have, obviously, the better playoffs. The more likely the team is to make the playoffs. So, like, in the history of the NBA, with 6 or fewer wins, only 4 teams have ever made the playoffs in the first 20 games when they have 6 or fewer wins. Obviously, all 4 of those teams were in the East, so we don't have as much to worry about, but the statistics are very low. The East, I think, is if you're 9-11, then you have a 68% chance of making the playoffs, whereas in the West, it's 11-9, and your percentage is 55%. And then after that, it goes down dramatically. Obviously, you know, the West being the better conference. So, you know, yes, I agree, Matt. You don't have to win. I would like to see a great game. But this is definitely one of those wins where it'll count for later in the season, because we're going to see these guys again. And it'd be nice, you know, to come out, like you said, showing what Simmons and Embiid have. And out of the 2 games on the first night, I'm truly excited for this one. I think this is a better of the 2 matchups. So the other game that will follow the Sixers is the Thunder versus the Warriors. Now the Thunder, being as bad as they were last year and then came together towards the end, did get rid of Melo. So the Thunder have a lot more. They have an improved team, I think, by getting rid of Melo, because I think he was a deterrent to that team at times. He did help them, but, you know, towards the end of the season, it became more gelled. So, you know, it'll be good to see what the Thunder have to offer. It'll also be good to see if the Warriors will show up for the first game, or, you know, how much of an impact does Cousins make that he cannot do the run and gun offense that the Warriors have here. I think this should be either a great game or it's going to be a blowout by the Warriors.
Well, Boogie won't be playing. He won't be back till later in the season. So
that's right.
But, I mean, I feel like this is always going to be good just because of the Westbrook-Durant situation. I feel like, you know, Westbrook's going to show up because the Warriors are going to probably get their rings that day, and it's just going to fuel Westbrook even more than he usually is. I feel like he's going to try to drop 40 if he can, at least. So, I mean, Westbrook and Paul George. I mean, they're really not. Thunder are not, like Ryan mentioned, they're not as talented as the Warriors. And once again, I don't expect them to go really far in the playoffs this year. But I mean, they definitely have decent talent. I'm sure they could beat anyone on any given night, but I don't think this is the night they do it. I think Golden State's going to win this one, with or without. It doesn't matter without Boogie, because of the fact that they still have 4 All-Stars. Team's really good, and they just got their rings. I think they're going to just try to prove the point that, hey, we're defending champs, and you're the Thunder. You guys don't scare us.
No, that's a very fair statement. But so the next night, speaking of Carmelo Anthony, the Pelicans faced off against the Rockets for one of the primetime games. And I say Carmelo because he was just picked up by the Rockets and will be playing down in Houston. I think that it could be a good game, but I think this will be the test game to see if Melo really does hurt this offensive line. D'Antoni's like, he's going to fit well here and all that. I think this game, the Pelicans had a lot to end the season last year, and they didn't lose a great deal. They did lose some people, but they still have a solid core that I think they could come out swinging. I seriously think that they'll end up beating the Rockets in this one.
Yeah, I mean, from what I heard, that Carmelo will come off the bench. There's a possibility that might happen, which is great, because I think Ryan and I spoke about it, that at this point in his career, I don't think he's going to add great value to that Rockets starting lineup. We already knew that starting lineup is really good, especially with CP3 and Harden leading that first unit. They don't need Carmelo, but that bench unit definitely could use a guy like Carmelo. We know he's a great scorer. He's definitely what he's always been, a great ISO scorer. I think if he's willing to do that bench role, that sixth man, I think that's really going to help the team. And I think if that's the case, the Rockets could, that could be the first game, to show, like, basically see how the experiment works with Carmelo. If he's not willing to do that, or maybe that chemistry isn't what it's supposed to be, I think it's going to be a long season for the Rockets. Whereas for the Pelicans, we already know what their star is, Anthony Davis. That's the team. We'll see how he does. That's basically what I'm looking for. Anthony Davis basically versus everybody when it comes to the Pelicans. There's really no one else on the Pelicans that I believe in.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you here. I mean, we know we've talked about Melo, and he's definitely said he doesn't want to come off the bench, so it will be an interesting dynamic. The primetime game on that night will be the Mavericks versus the Suns. You're looking at Ayton making his NBA debut, and Doncic?
Yes.
No, I can't say that name. I was trying to think how to say it in my head. You got the two rookies facing off against each other for this one. That's why this is a primetime game here. The Mavericks weren't anything to talk about, neither were the Suns last year. But 1 and 2 going up against each other. This is definitely what everyone wants to see and see who has proven themselves or who can play in their first NBA game. I think it'll be a well fought game on both ends, because both teams still have a lot to prove. And we'll see if the Suns come out on top.
Well, I mean, I think I've told you multiple times in this podcast that I feel like Doncic is going to be the better player here. I mean, I think Ayton's going to be fine. I think he's a decent prospect. But at the end of the day, I think Doncic is going to be the best player in this draft. And I think he's going to show us in that first week that he's going to be on his road to that Rookie of the Year. And I hope he does that with the Mavericks.
Thursday night's game, we're back watching our Sixers, and they're going against the Chicago Bulls. The Sixers want to come out, and this isn't. I mean, I don't think this is going to be a tough matchup for them. I don't think the Bulls really have much in their way. I think the Sixers will have an easy home game against the Bulls, and they'll pull off the win. I don't see this being a real difficult game.
This should be the home opener, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a relatively easy win. There's no one on the Bulls that really scared me. I mean, they got Jabari Parker now, the hometown kid. He ain't going to save them. The Bulls are not a really good team at all. I don't see much competition from the Bulls this year in the Eastern Conference. I think the Sixers are going to, basically get that first home victory in this one.
It'll be great to see. So what everyone's will be waiting for, though, is after the Sixers game, you will see the debut of LeBron James going up against the Portland Trailblazers. I don't have much respect for the Lakers in general as a team, but with LeBron there, the Trailblazers aren't, they were I'm pretty sure they were the 3 seed last year. But I just, if anybody, LeBron's coming out swinging, even if it is in Portland, and he's coming out swinging to get that W at the end of the day against these guys, just to prove he can play in the West. And I think it's going to be a well-fought game, but I think LeBron's got something to prove in his first game as a Laker.
Yeah, I'm not really sure why the NBA schedule makers did it this way. One, they put LeBron's first game later in the week, and also not at home. So I'm not really sure what their thinking is there. I would think they wanted one of the first couple games, and especially in LA, because it's Los Angeles and it's LeBron James. But hey, maybe they're smarter than I am. But like Ryan mentioned, I think LeBron's definitely going to try to put a stamp on that in his Lakers uniform. And the Blazers are not really that tough of an opponent. They were a 3 seed last year in the playoffs, but then they got swept by the Pelicans. So really, I don't think LeBron needs to really worry much with the Blazers. I mean, they got Lillard and McCollum. They're good players, but I know Ryan doesn't have much respect for the Lakers roster. But I mean, as we've seen multiple times, LeBron James with basically anybody could beat anybody besides the Golden State Warriors. So I'm not really too worried here. And as this is the first game of the season, he'll be fully energized and motivated. So I think he's trying to, prove his point that he's still the best player in the league, and it doesn't matter where he is. He's still out there to beat everyone.
So after Thursday night, you get into the NBA. We're going to head to Friday, and you're going to see the Boston Celtics again. But this time they're going up against a newly revamped Raptors with Kawhi Leonard. So it's the first time we're seeing Kawhi Leonard, and he will be at home in Toronto. I think, like I said about LeBron with the Lakers, Kawhi's got a lot to prove here as well, and he's gonna show that he does have what it takes, and there's just some internal conflict that he had to disprove and come over to Toronto.
Well, yeah, we'll see if Kawhi actually does play. I mean, we're not sure yet, right? I mean, we're assuming that he does, but I guess we won't know. But I think this is another potential Eastern Conference playoff matchup that we could potentially see. The new look Raptors, like Ryan mentioned, with the Celtics, who people are assuming is going to be that Eastern favorite. But Ryan, I mean, Jaylen Brown guaranteed that Eastern Finals crown. We mentioned with the Celtics and Sixers, and now Celtics and Raptors. I think these are some early tests for that Celtics team to see how correct Jaylen might be later in the season. And I think this is definitely going to be a good test with Kawhi if he does play, and if he is fully healthy. I think we'll definitely see a team that's definitely trying to knock off the Celtics later in the year.
Oh, I mean, no doubt. If Kawhi does play, which I think he will. I don't think there's anything to worry about there with him. And someone's got to shut up Jaylen Brown, so why not Kawhi Leonard and the newly revamped Toronto Raptors, who don't have to worry about LeBron James knocking them out in the Eastern Conference at all, because they're not going to be there anymore. So I think that, being that they were so dominant last year, they had something to come out and prove. And with a new star on the team, I think they'll show what they've got against the Celtics and show them, listen, you guys ain't nothing. So later in that night, we're going to see the Warriors versus the rookie. Oh, I'm sorry, no, not the rookie of the year, the runner-up, Donovan Mitchell and the Jazz. This should be, again, I feel another easy win for the Warriors if they show up and play. I mean, obviously, Donovan Mitchell has something to prove, and it being at home and how they ended their season last year, he definitely wants to come out swinging again. But I still think the Warriors, if they actually really want to play hard and play, obviously they can beat anybody. And I think the Jazz, in their first week, there's going to be some stumbles, but I don't think the Jazz is going to be that team to stop them.
Ryan throwing some shade against Donovan Mitchell. It's pretty early, bro.
I could throw shade. He ain't rookie of the year. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, I have to agree. Obviously, he is not rookie of the year. Our boy Ben Simmons is. But he's still a very good player. And like Ryan mentioned, the Jazz just don't have enough weapons to beat Golden State. They play great defense. And, they're a great team. Like, internally, they have very good chemistry with each other. But yeah, they just don't have enough to beat with Golden State when they're clicking. They just don't have enough offense. I mean, Mitchell, he could get his points, but I'm not really sure who else can. So, yeah, I think this is going to be relatively easy for Golden State.
So then we move to Saturday, and I know I talked earlier about how they lowered the fact that teams playing back-to-back games. Well, you're going to see Toronto again the following day on Saturday, this time playing against the Wizards. I don't think the Wizards have done much in the offseason to improve the team, so I don't see the Raptors. I see the Raptors starting their season 2-0, is basically what I'm telling you.
You think they're going to win that back-to-back?
I know it's not in their favor. I know the off team wins 56% of the time or some number like that, but I think, like I said, which Kawhi should be playing, I think that he'll be able to prove that, he is a star still, and this team is going to start the season off 2-0 with back-to-back, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I know you have no respect for the Wizards because of John Wall and Bradley Beal. I mean, they're one of the best backcourts in the league. There's no doubt about that, but I'm not going to deny that, Ryan is correct on the fact that they really haven't showed us much over the years. They always get knocked out early in the playoffs. They really don't show true grit when you need it. And if the Raptors play like they're supposed to, with Kawhi as their leader, I don't see why this would be any different. But because it's the Wizards, I'm assuming it might be their home opener at this point. That then maybe they'll try to start off a season strong to try to catapult them early in the season.
So later in that night, Matt gets what he was looking for. Now it's not the first 2 days of the NBA season, but we will see the Lakers at home going up against the Houston Rockets. This is going to be a test for both teams. I feel the Rockets will, as long as everyone's on point, they have a way better chance of beating the Los Angeles Lakers, and the Los Angeles Lakers have at beating the Rockets. Although, as Matt mentioned before, you really can't count out LeBron James or his team, and being that this is a home opener for the Lakers, LeBron probably should come out with this win here and prove to them, like I said, that he can play in the East against some of the better teams, i.e. the Houston Rockets, who were one of the best teams in the West last year.
Yeah, I mean, the Rockets, like Ryan just mentioned, is one of the better teams in the NBA, but I think they're definitely going to regress a little bit this season compared to last season. I think, yes, last year was a season that they played way better than people expected. They had 65 wins. I don't expect them to do that again. I mean, and they added Melo, as Ryan would say. That ain't going to help them. So I think Lakers with LeBron, even though I think LeBron could beat anyone, I think the Rockets do win this one just because of the fact that a majority of their team played together last year. They just have a better unit, I would say, than LeBron. But that doesn't mean that I think it's going to be a blowout by any means. I just think it's going to be the Rockets by a couple points, just because I think they just know how to play as a team together, as opposed to the Lakers are still gelling together this early in the season, and because they're playing a tough opponent, I just don't think they'll be coming away with a win.
So for the final game of that week on Sunday, and again the NBA tells me, statistically they've lowered their back-to-back games, we're going to see the Houston Rockets again. This time it's going to be against the Los Angeles Clippers. So first the Lakers and then the Clippers the next night. I mean, the Clippers don't really have much to offer here, so with another back-to-back, I will take the Houston Rockets in this one. Like I said, Clippers don't have much to offer, and by the third game of the season, I think Houston will have enough in them that they'll be able to flesh out some issues with a bad team like this, where it's not going to affect them even if they play poorly.
Yeah, I think definitely this is on paper, I think this is an easy win, but I think because of the back-to-back, I think the Clippers might pull this off because just because of the fact that they are not able to rest the Rockets won't have rest because they're going back-to-back. And the Clippers, I mean, I know a lot of people don't think they're going to be good because they traded away all their stars. I just think this is going to be a different type of team for Doc Rivers, so I think he's going to be able to motivate them to just pull this one out. I think it's going to be relatively tough for them, but I think it's a good test for this young Clippers team. I think they'll be pulling it off.
I'd like to interrupt this podcast to thank the sponsors of the beat you have been listening to for the past couple months in the background of our podcast. It is a song, Rejection, by the Kidney Boys. they will be releasing the first single, Rejection, that you hear in the background of our podcast within the coming week or so. So be on the lookout for that on Spotify, iTunes, and Apple Music, as well as Amazon Music.
Getting back into it, we're going to move on to the NCAA. So college basketball changed up a few of their rules recently, Ryan. I want to hear your take on this. The first rule being that players who get invited to the combine can return to school even if they hired an agent. Whereas before, if you hired an agent, you were not able to go back to school. You just have to go professional. If you don't make the NBA, you can just go overseas or go to the G League or something like that. So, in my opinion, I think this is good for the player themselves because, if they have eligibility left, they'll be able to go back to college. Either, obviously get their education, maybe graduate. Obviously, that's never a negative there. Or they could play more college basketball, which they could help their experience, and maybe go to the NBA the year after. So I don't really see a negative here from the player standpoint. I just find it interesting that the NCAA finally approved this rule, and I don't know why they didn't from the get-go.
No, I agree with you. I mean, this is a rule that, like you said, why wasn't this in place beforehand? I remember, you automatically get an agent, you're out of college, which makes no sense. So you're basically punishing the kid who wants to try and make it to the NBA and then doesn't, and you can't go back and get a college degree as well as play some more college basketball to get some more experience. I never understood that rule, so I like the fact that this is what they've turned it around and brought it to this. It's definitely fair for the kids. It just shows a lot more integrity for the colleges all the way around to want the kids to learn to get an actual education and possibly advance their career, if not in basketball, and something else.
The next thing I think is a little more controversial in my opinion. The NCAA is allowing elite high school players to be represented by an agent when they're in college. How do you define elite? Is that just McDonald's All-American, a top 50 player? It could be anything. It doesn't have to be any single thing. And it seems like what they want is USA Basketball to basically provide them a list of who they think is elite. I think this is the wrong way to go about it. I think you should either have anyone who wants to have an agent, or have no one have an agent. I don't think you should have so-called elite players have this, because as we know from years past, there's players who become elite during the season. So there's no way of us knowing that until you play it out. For example, like a Donovan Mitchell, we kind of didn't know him until he started playing at Louisville and started doing well. He was not a top 10 player going into that season. So I don't think this is fair. I don't think this is the right way to go about it. And USA Basketball has mentioned that they don't want to be a part of this, and I don't think they feel obligated. But what do you think about this, Ryan? Do you think this is the way to go about it, or do you see a better way we could rank players?
If they had a better system in place, then maybe. But in general, like you said, if you're not going to give everyone an agent, then why do it? If there's no standards and you're saying elite, NBA doesn't want to get involved. That's not their place to get involved. And to be elite could mean nothing, because they could be elite going to college and then they just fall apart. So it's either give everybody an opportunity to have an agent, or don't give it at all. To be elite and then they end up not doing anything, it's a waste of time and resources, and I don't really see the point for a college kid to have an agent at that point when they're not supposed to be making money anyway.
So the next college topic that we have is even more controversial, and there's really no positive here at all, is Ohio State. One of their assistant coaches allegedly has some domestic abuse issues, and Urban Meyer, the head coach, everyone knows who he is. He's won multiple championships with Ohio State and Florida, but supposedly he didn't know anything about it. I find this hard to believe, as he's clearly the number one there. either he did know about it and just didn't do anything about it, or literally people hid it from him for his own good. Whatever the case is, I don't see any kind of positive here, because he knew this is not the first time something like this occurred with this specific assistant. He's had these issues before, where they kind of brushed it off at the first instance, but now it's been multiple times. But yet Urban Meyer didn't want to kick him off the team. He didn't want to do anything. He just still kept him on the staff. I find this very, very sad and disheartening that he would do that, just because of the fact that he believes he's a valuable coach on his team, that because of the fact he won't remove him from the team or suspend him or anything. So now obviously he's gotten fired, but now they're saying that Urban Meyer deserves a punishment too, which I totally agree with. He, as basically the number one head guy there, he deserves some responsibility. He hired this person, he refused to punish him at all, and now the college itself is getting looked at even more intensely. What do you think about this issue, Ryan? What do you think could have occurred at Ohio State could make this a more positive situation than it has?
Well, first off, like you said, neither Matt or I condone abuse of any sort or even allegations about that. I just want to make that perfectly clear here. Secondly, like Matt said, I don't know how he didn't know. He came out with his statement saying he didn't know, and then I read that Ohio State has suspended him with pay, so there's a slap on the wrist there. But for Urban Meyer, I'm talking about here. But he didn't know, but then later in that week, after he already came out saying, I don't know any of this, I knew nothing about it, he had known about the previous case, which I think was dating back to 2015 or 2005, some earlier, not recently. So that he had known about incidents with this guy and his wife at the time, and that this was an issue with him, and he still hired him on as an assistant coach when he brought him into Ohio State. There's something wrong there, good coach or not. You shouldn't condone that. It's just bad in general. It's bad publicity for you, bad publicity for the school, and it's just bad to condone anything for somebody who does that kind of stuff. The school obviously should have known about too, if everyone else had known about it, from what I've read in different articles here, that Urban Meyer may have said this, but they should be like, listen, we see this guy's track record, we don't want a bad reputation for the school. I understand, maybe give him a second chance here, but still at some point there's got to be some way. And from what I've also read, all the wives of all the coaches and everything, they all knew about this guy's reputation and what he is allegedly done to his wife, or whatever the case may be. So again, Urban Meyer needs to be punished for this. There's no way he didn't know. I mean, you're basically playing dumb, but everyone else around you knew. I'm sorry, I just don't believe it. It's just, there's no possible way that you didn't know about this, and he should be punished. Like you said, the school's getting looked at more. Whether they suspend him for the whole season without pay, I just think suspending him with pay doesn't really do much for anybody. You gotta hit the guy a little bit harder. Get in his head. Listen, you gotta be smart about what you do. You're a great football coach. You obviously should have been on top of this one. That's not going to make or break you when we're talking about people and their lives, and that's just my take on it.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, if it does come out that he did know, I think he should get fired. This is not something that should be tolerated at all. Obviously, we know about the Penn State issue from years ago with Paterno and his assistant, and now this. I feel like great coaches, they kind of get away with stuff because of the fact that they continue to win. But at what point do you realize this is just, as a good human being, you can't be letting these types of things go? That there is a zero tolerance policy, I feel like, for any coaching staff or people in general.
It's called speaking up. It's called saying something. Like, just do something. So I agree with you on that, Matt. Fired is the way to go. Just get him out of the way. Get rid of the problem, since, like you said, he was getting away with it. And I said, suspending him with pay doesn't do anybody any good.
Last topic in this section doesn't get any better when it comes to these topics in college. A University of Maryland football player passed away due to exhaustion after training. I mean, I know in college football, there's a lot of competitive training, games that they have, especially in the preseason. They want to get ready for the season. They want to be competitive all year. They want to be a top 20 program. I get all that, but at what point does these football programs realize that it's not worth it at the end of the day? And this player clearly, he had enough. I mean, he said, I believe in the article that I read, you could easily tell teammates knew that he was at that point where he couldn't take it anymore. But the strength and conditioning coach kept pushing him and pushing him, and and that was that. I read today that strength and conditioning coach has been fired, which that I feel like that should be like day one. That shouldn't even been a thought. But once again, it's that coach of that Maryland program. He, I guess, consented this type of coaching, that he was okay with people keep pushing and pushing till players can't take it anymore. And I don't know if that's the right way to go, but I understand pushing your players, to make them better. But once they say they can't go any further, I don't know if you had to keep pushing them to the point of extreme exhaustion and where this player had to pass away. I mean, at what point do you realize, a life is, a life's a life, so you can't just give up. You can't just let that go because of the fact that you want to win a football game.
This isn't an easy topic either. And I said, like Matt said, there's a point. If all the players saw it, this coach just, I get pushing to the max to be the best, to get to be the best. You got to push yourself past that exhaustion point. I understand that. But there's a point you can see in someone's face, listen, you need to stop. And you should realize that as a coach, as a coaching staff. As if the players are seeing this, obviously the coaching staff should be seeing this and not overlooking something that's pure exhaustion. People whine about being tired, so that's different. But you can see exhaustion in someone's face. Me and Matt have trained together for years now. We've been friends for forever. We train and practice all the time together. So, we can see in our faces when we're pushing ourselves past the limit of, a tolerance and an exhaustion. There's a point. And both of us can see that in each other's faces or just in ourselves. And we know when to stop. And as a coach, you need to be able to see that and feel that. And like Matt said, he should have been fired day one. Whether it was the Maryland coach trying to protect his coach or whatever the case may be. Like I said, there's a point between pushing past a barrier and pushing past exhaustion. And, there's no reason that this kid had to go at such a young age because of exhaustion. There's no rhyme or reason to that at the end of the day. As I said, you're about winning games, and I understand that. That's not what I'm saying, but there's a point you can tell when a player is past a wall or past further than that to where, something could seriously be wrong with them. So let's get into hot topics, and a more lighter note for my hot topic. We're going to talk about LeBron James and how he opened up an I Promise school in Akron for at-risk kids. I commend everything LeBron has done for his city. He ended up going to LA at the end of the day. He didn't come to the Sixers. He didn't stay in Cleveland, blah, blah, whatever. As a person, as a human being, as a person who gives back to his community, I respect him beyond anybody else. This man went and built a school for kids, who don't have schools, or, they're trouble with, the inner city in Akron, and, to help these kids learn, to teach, and all that. And you got to respect that. Hate it or love the guy, people. You got to respect what he is doing for, his hometown and what he's doing for these kids to try and help them get a better life out of this. And I said, people can degrade him or whatever they want to do, but at the end of the day, I got the utmost respect for what he has done and for his city and in general for kids all around the world.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ryan. I mean, we mentioned a couple of podcasts ago about Mbappe giving his World Cup salary to charity. I mean, this is another thing that I feel like this has been even more publicized because it's LeBron James, obviously, but because obviously opening up a school is great. but because of who he is, it makes it even greater. I mean, and this school provides so much for these kids. Not only, obviously, that education is important, but they also provide bicycles to each kid so they could, travel to and from school, trying to get away from all those negative things in Akron. Obviously, LeBron James personally knows that. That's why he did that, because he had a bike and he felt that kind of got him away from all those dangerous areas. And then obviously you got free tuition to University of Akron once they graduate high school. That's great. I mean, some of these kids don't have that financial security from their parents, but yet here you go. If you're able to get into University of Akron, LeBron James is going to pay for it. I mean, I feel like these are all great things, and like Ryan mentioned, even if you don't like LeBron James as an athlete, you don't like him as a basketball player, that's all great. But at the end of the day, what he's doing for society, you can't deny that. He's doing great things, and I hope he continues to do, not just in Akron, but all over the country. So for my hot topic, speaking of talk about lighter things, this is even more hilarious. And speaking of Cleveland, makes it even better. 10 Cleveland bars are giving away free beer once the Browns win their first game. This is hilarious because of the fact that the Browns have not won a game last season. So we're not sure when this might happen this year, because the Browns still not that good, and they have a relatively tough schedule because they play in the AFC North. So I found this funny just because of the fact that we don't know when it's going to happen or if it's going to happen. Maybe they could save their money, because if they go 0-16 again, maybe they don't have to give away that free beer. But Ryan, what do you think about this? I guess you could call it some kind of a publicity stunt by these bars. But I think it's pretty funny that they would do this, because obviously you won't do this with any other team, because they would get that first win relatively early. But for Cleveland, we're not sure when that would happen.
Well, with the revamped team, it may happen sooner than later. But I know where we're going once Cleveland gets their first win. We're heading to Cleveland. We're heading down to Cleveland bars. We're hitting all 10 bars and getting all of our free beer and calling it a day. No, I mean, with the revamped team, it's definitely a publicity stunt, it seems, more or less. But they do have a better offensive team this year that they could possibly get one win relatively early. I'm not getting my hopes up. I'm just it is a possibility here, but it's definitely a stunt. It's funny. It's lighthearted, but it gives hope to a city that really has nobody now with LeBron James gone. You got Kevin Love and the Cavs. That's let's be real here. And then you got the Cleveland Browns, who went 0-16. So give some hope for the team. Maybe have fans want to come out and cheer for their team, because they were so bad last year. Maybe the fan attendance was a little low, so said let's get something out there so fans show up for the game to cheer for them. It gives them hope to the players more energetic to play and win. So I get it. It's funny, but at the same time, it could help them get their first win relatively early this season.
Well, that's all we have for this week's episode of the Benchwarmers. Once again, please subscribe to our podcast on Google Play, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and YouTube, and follow us on Twitter at Benchwarmers06. Thanks again. See you guys next week.
The Benchwarmers.